Wales webinars. Today we're going to be talking about understanding the sporting landscape. Hopefully everybody's in now and you can hear me. If you can't, you'll notice just down here, there's a little chat box. If you've got any problems, just type a message in there. Remember, everyone else can see that message, but give me a shout in there if there's any problems with hearing me. Just firstly, before we get started, some logistics. Firstly, I'm recording this webinar, so after this is finished, everything that you can see on your screen is being recorded. That's going to be uploaded onto our website so that you can watch it back, or people that can't be here now can watch it and listen to the presentation and the questions that you've asked and see everything. So just be aware that we're recording this, and if you'd like to come back to it, then you can, and we'll send the link round for that later on. Secondly, because it's a webinar, obviously we're not in the same room. It's very difficult for you just to throw your hand up and ask a question. If you've got any questions, please just stick them in the chat box at the side. If I can get to it whilst I'm talking, then I'll try to do that. But if not, we can come back to them at the end. And certainly there's a section for questions at the end. So as it goes through, if anything pops into your head that you want to ask a question about, feel free to send that through. If you'd like to just now, say hello in the chat box. Let us know where you are. I know it is summer holidays, so if anyone is anywhere particularly nice, if you're sunning yourself on the coast of Pembrokeshire or up Snowdon, let us know. If, like me, you're in an office with not very much air conditioning and feeling a little bit warm, let us know that as well, but do say hello. The final bit of housekeeping is there aren't any fire alarms planned. If the fire alarm goes off here, then I will have to leave. Obviously, you won't. Hopefully, that doesn't happen. One of the good things about doing the webinars also is that we can do polls. So the first poll, before we get started, considering that we're here to talk about understanding the sporting landscape, how much do you know about the sporting landscape? The question is there. All of you can answer. You need to click your answer and then click the little button at the bottom. Once everybody's clicked their answer, then we'll finish that. Throughout the session, there'll be questions like this for you to answer. So there'll be a few of these as we go. That's partly useful for me just to see what you guys are thinking as we go through, hopefully to get some really good feedback from what your organizations are doing, and also for each of you to see what everybody else thinks. Possibly got another couple of votes left. Okay. So in the voting there, and then hopefully you can see those results. A little bit of a mix. Some people know a little bit, want to know a bit more. Some people are starting right at the start. That's probably a good mix actually, where it is an introductory webinar. We're only here for a little while, but hopefully through this we can give you an overview of firstly what we're talking about, what it means, and then give you enough ammunition that you can go off and start trying to learn a bit more on your own and looking into it in a little bit more depth. Okay, so the agenda for today. Firstly, what is the sporting landscape? Why is it important for NGBs to understand it, and how can you start to engage with it? So just an introduction to the sporting landscape, what the role of NGBs is, and how you can, sort of actions and processes that you can build into your daily activity to try and improve the way that you engage and understand the sporting landscape, both individually and on behalf of your organization as a whole. The sporting landscape, I'll give a hat tip to Maxine, who leads on the sporting landscape at Sport Wales, for pointing me in the direction of this fantastic diagram from Sport New Zealand's community sports strategy, which demonstrates it far better than I could explain it. The sporting landscape that we're talking about is everybody and everything that is involved in sport within your sector. So this is New Zealand's example. The same thing applies to Wales. It's not just NGBs, it's not just Sport Wales, it's the participants, the athletes, the facilities, really we've got a huge range of people and stakeholders who are impacting on sport. So some examples here, and I wouldn't expect this to be a particularly exhaustive list, but obviously the national governing bodies are part of it. Sport Wales, obviously part of it. WSA, but also Welsh Government have an interest in sport and how it works. Most of you, certainly you've got international federations for your sport. Some of you will have sibling organisations in the other home nations, potentially a British NGB that links to all the home nations as well. It's also important to remember the people that provide sport, so the facility providers, leisure trusts, local authorities, schools who are having a real impact. School sport has a real impact on what particularly younger participants are doing, where they're getting introduced to sport, what sports they're getting introduced to. And then the people that make it happen, the sports clubs, the coaches, the officials, the athletes themselves, parents of younger athletes who have an influence on what those athletes participate in. And then also looking at the media for how they report on sport and how they get the word out, or how you use media, social media, to get your word out. And then sponsors and other corporate partners who are helping to fund sport. They're all really important parts of the sporting landscape. This by no means is an exhaustive list, but I think it gives you an idea of what we're looking at and what we're talking about. So certainly the sporting landscape is the totality of everyone and everything that has an impact on sport in Wales. Certainly when we're talking about Wales's sporting landscape. So where do national governing bodies fit in? Top marks, extra points, really just for pride to anybody that can name either of these people. The guy on the right is not Lord Farquaad from Shrek. For a good couple of thousand years, we were under the impression that the Earth was the centre of the universe. The guy on the left is Ptolemy, who said that the Earth was the centre of the universe, everything else revolved around them. It wasn't until the 16th century, the guy on the right, Nicholas Copernicus, came along and said, actually, looking at it, I think probably the sun's in the middle and we go round them. That turned out to be right. And since then, it's not just a case of we go round the sun, but also we're part of a much bigger universe which revolves around lots of other factors. The point of that rather stretched analogy is that NGBs are not the centre of the sporting landscape. We are not the centre of the universe, and it's important for us to be aware of that when we think about how we engage with the sporting landscape, because it's all about our perspective and where we fit in. Now, what you'll have seen in the earlier example from New Zealand, and what you'll see if you look at the Vision for Sport, Sport Wales' new strategy, which I definitely recommend you reading if you haven't, because I think it's a fantastic document and a fantastic move forward, is that in most instances we'd consider that the participants themselves are the ones who are at the centre of that landscape. The participants, without people to actually play the sport, no other part of the landscape is working at all. We can't have national governing bodies if we don't have people playing the sport. Likewise, facility providers, they've got nobody to provide facilities to. So it's important that when we're talking about the sporting landscape, we consider the fact that we are not the centre of that landscape. We play a part in it, and what we want to talk more about today is where we fit in that network and how we take advantage of the network that is there to make the most out of our work and have the greatest impact we possibly can. So why do we want to engage? It's about realizing that we don't operate in a bubble. We are not, on our own with, football or hockey or table tennis or any other sport being just an NGB and people who play those sports, and we're unaffected by the outside world. We've got this entire huge network of organisations all vying for the same 3-point-something million people in Wales to play their sport or to get involved in their physical activity, to work with the same funders, the same regulators, the same possibly sponsorship market, the same facility providers, this huge big network, all of us impact on each other. And if we don't recognize how other people can impact and influence on us, then they're going to do that without us having any control over it. So the purpose of us engaging with the sporting landscape, the whole point behind Principle 7 of the Governance Leadership Framework, is this awareness of, bursting our bubble, sticking the head above the parapet, whatever cliche you want to use, and paying attention to what the rest of the network and what the rest of the landscape is up to, and how that impacts on the decisions that we make. So in terms of specific areas that it can help us, your strategy. If you're thinking up your strategy and what your plan is going to be for the next 5 years, it makes sense for you to look at what everybody else is up to. What is the Sport Wales strategy, and how does my strategy match up with, how do we fit the same bill? If I'm looking at planning my strategy and how to get more young people active, what can I take inspiration from in terms of what other NGBs are doing, or what's happening in schools, or what private providers are doing, or what coaches think, or indeed, most importantly, what young people think about how they want to be engaged in sport. All of those questions, that a properly articulated strategy needs to have influence from what's going on in the rest of the network. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fit it in particularly well. Your strategy might work on paper, but it won't work in practice because you haven't looked at what the landscape looks like. The second area then, once you've got that strategy and it's moving, is risk management. So thinking like looking out for icebergs if you're sailing a cruise ship. Hopefully everything is going to run smoothly, but unless you keep an eye out for what the potential bumps might be, prepare yourself for those, mitigate potential risks, you've not really got any guarantee. You're trying to mitigate risk as far as you can. So that awareness of looking at, what's the funding situation like? What do we think other NGBs are doing that's going to impact on the way that we operate? Where have other people made mistakes that we can learn from? What do we know about changes in the Welsh Government strategy for sport that's going to impact on the way that we deliver? How can we take advantage of the new Sport Wales strategy to, put forward the message about how great our sport is and how that works? That, in terms of risk management, I think is the key part. It's not just about having a nice policy or a procedure or a, really orderly, good-looking risk management matrix. Your risk register mapped out for 200 odd risks. It's actually the effectiveness of it is dependent on how you monitor and prepare yourself for those risks, and how you are aware and engaging with what everybody else is doing and where those risks might be coming from. Thirdly, we're looking at partnerships. So the way that you, find opportunities to work with other people. You all work with Sport Wales, and certainly that's a really important partnership for you. But how do you take advantage of partnerships with the rest of the sector? So how do you work with and learn from other similar organisations, with your counterparts in other NGBs? What partnerships can you build with facilities providers to help build your sport, or help to safeguard the facilities for your sport? And those partners can be really wide and far ranging. So if you're, we take Swim Wales as a hypothetical, they're going to want to work with local authorities and the people that run swimming pools and the leisure trusts because they want to maintain those facilities. For somebody like Canoe Wales, it's not necessarily local authorities. It could be Natural Resources Wales, and how Natural Resources Wales manage access to rivers, or even the supply of water to their national water sports centre in Bala, which is in part influenced by what Natural Resources Wales want to do with the dam that's up there. So each different organisation will have different partners. You'll have different stakeholders. The important thing is that you're aware of your own partners and you're working to engage with them, and that way you can hopefully see a huge amount of benefit. The final of the big four areas where I think engagement with the sporting landscape can really help is the perennial struggle we have with trying to become sustainably financed organisations. A lot of us are heavily reliant on what funding we can get from Sport Wales or from government through the sports councils. We're also looking at how do we build other options there. How do we bring in new revenue streams? Where can we get sponsorship for potentially corporate partners or fundraising opportunities to help make us sustainable and improve the amount of work that we can do? Your engagement with the landscape, those sponsors are part of the landscape. Being aware of what the trends are in the sector, who might be interested, that's all part of your engagement with the sporting landscape, and something that's hopefully you're taking a really keen interest in, given where we've been over the past few years. With that in mind, looking then at where do we start, where do we go to start off with our engagement. The first, and I think most important aspect here, is mapping your landscape. We said before that national governing bodies are not at the centre of the universe. You've each got your own individual perspective, and it's not just NGBs are in one spot. Every different NGB, every different organisation, every different sports club will have a different perspective on the landscape, so it's important that you do your own exercise to map that landscape. So think about who are your key stakeholders, map them in terms of how much influence do they have on your organisation, and how interested are they in your organisation. Do they want to be really keenly involved, and do they have a lot of power over what you do, or are they at the other end of the spectrum where they don't have too much power, but they're also not so interested, and therefore they're not as important to you? Where do they fit on that spectrum? Once you've got that, you can have a think about how you want to engage with those people. How do you manage your engagement with people in different areas of the spectrum that you've mapped out? So you know who are the really important ones that you need to focus on and speak to regularly. You know who your targets are to engage better and who you want to chase, but also you know who the people are that you don't necessarily need to chase, and that allows you to focus your work and focus your engagement and not waste your time chasing people that aren't interested. Those steps can be relatively simple. It doesn't have to be a huge exercise. It can be an hour spent with a big sheet of paper just sort of mapping it all out and getting yourself an idea. But once you've got that idea, once you know what the landscape looks like, it will help you as an organisation to understand how you're operating, who's influencing on you, and where you need to keep an eye out and be aware of what it is that is going to have an impact on your ability to do the job that you want to do. For me to get an idea, it would be good to know how many of you have already carried out a stakeholder mapping exercise. So the voting's up there, and you can click on. It's interesting, again, it's sort of 50-50, which is interesting. A few more votes possibly. Okay, call it there. So you can see overall, about half of the people in the room have, and about half of you haven't. So that's an interesting split. I think reflecting on it, I'd certainly say it's really important. So those of you that haven't done it yet, I would encourage you to think about doing that at some point in the very near future. The next step, once you have mapped your landscape, once you have an idea of who you want to engage with, how you want to engage with them, what different areas are influencing on your organisation. The second step is making sure that you have the skills and experience and knowledge to be able to take advantage of that engagement. So we come back to Principle 4, it's where sort of Principle 4 and Principle 7 cross over, but having a balanced, inclusive and skilled board. So when you're doing your board recruitment and when you're looking at potentially filling vacancies on your board, having consideration about, do you have people that have got experience working with the people that you want to engage with? So if you're looking to engage with local authorities, do you have people on your board or in your organization who understand how local authorities work and understand how they want to be engaged, what they want to talk about, how their systems operate and how you can be involved in that? Likewise, if it's more sort of policy-based, public affairs-based, and you're looking at the work of Welsh Government, do you have people that understand how that system works? Who are the people to speak to? How do you get to influence assembly members? How can you start to impact on the areas that you want to impact on? So as well as when we're, normally we're talking in Principle 4 about the skills and experience and how they apply inside your organization and how people apply that, whether that's marketing skills or finance skills or governance skills. We also want to look at how can your board members and how can your staff team help you to engage outside the organization too? How does their skills and experience help that? So that's step 2. The third step is taking advantage of your networks. So I don't want to stick to that horrible image everyone's got of networking where you're standing in a room with lots of people having drinks. Not everybody likes that. That's not what I'm suggesting. But we're all part of the network that is the sporting landscape. And you all work with Sport Wales. The vast majority of you are members of the Welsh Sports Association, which your umbrella body for the sport and recreation sector in Wales. And then national organisations potentially on specific issues like the Youth Sport Trust, for example. These are all networks that you can take advantage of to be able to hear what other people are doing in the sector and see the challenges that other people are facing, or find out good practice examples of what people have done really well, to get yourself more information about what's happening, potential changes that might be coming, potential opportunities that you could take up. These are all really important opportunities for you to do that. So if you're not already engaging in the links that are available through these sort of organizations, I'd encourage you to start doing that, to start, even if it's just, you happen to be, say you happen to be at Sport Wales National Centre, you're bumping into people in the cafe, which I know happens all the time, taking opportunities in that situation to build those networks is a really important part of your engagement. It's quite casual, but it's the way that you get that information in about what's going on in the rest of the sector. The fourth, once you've done that, then is building on that and building strong relationships. So potentially you're from an organization that is very similar to a different organization where you face similar challenges or you've got similar stakeholders. The power of two organizations building a strong relationship where you're helping each other out, sharing information, potentially providing a collective voice to improve the strength of whatever argument or ask you're making. That's really important. It's also good when it comes around to sort of opportunities for collaboration. I think a good example from it's from outside of Wales, but you may have seen the work that the RNLI are doing with Swim England on teaching people to swim safe. So it's a swim safe program aimed at kids. It's all about being safe in open water, trying to prevent or decrease drownings that happen during the summer. Now that program is really successful, not only because they're getting the word out and getting lots of people involved, but also because they're working together and they're taking their sort of two different strengths and putting them, so Swim England's in teaching people to swim and the RNLI's in water safety, and sort of bringing that together, working together. They're having real success with that. And there's all sorts of opportunities like that people can collaborate if you want to. But, at the very least, if you're building those relationships and you're talking to other people and you're making friends across the landscape, you can learn from them, get some useful help and advice. You've got people to go to if perhaps they have, if perhaps they've already been through a situation that you're in now. You've got people you can go to and ask for advice. That's really, really helpful. It's a really simple step, but it's much better than trying to get on with that issue on your own without any help. The fifth step then, the final step, and I think definitely the most important one, and one that we sometimes forget, but the sporting landscape isn't just about organisations, and certainly most of us would agree that the participants are the people at the centre of that landscape. If you're not engaging with your participants, then you're always going to be a little bit removed from what they think and what they want. If your goal is to get more people participating in your sport, then it's important you understand what it is that they're looking for, why they engage, or in the case of potential participants, what it is that's stopping them engaging. So, why do people not engage in your sport is an important question, as important a question to ask as asking current participants why they keep engaging. Understanding what's stopping people is really important. And as we said at the start, the participants are, without them, you don't really have much of an organisation. You can have all the committees and training programs you like. We can have, we can have as many NGBs as you like, all the facilities in the world, but without the people to play the sport, there's nothing there. So it's a really, really, really important that we actually do listen to them. We do take the time to find out what their insight is and what they have to say, because otherwise our sort of participant-focused model just isn't going to work out. This poll question, I think, hopefully interesting for you to hear from each other, but really interesting for me. What do you consider to be the biggest barrier to engaging new participants in your sport and in your organisation? So it's a text question. You should have a little text box up to let you type in a quick answer. Just a word or two is fine. But it'd be good to know what you think. I think with the new vision for sport in Wales, where we're looking at all the way through that, regardless of which area we're talking about, we're focusing on people, getting more people active, getting more people involved in sport, and it's the people that are really central to all of this. So if that is the challenge that we're facing, and we're all facing roughly the same issue, trying to get a grip on what the barriers are, I think, is the biggest challenge for us in terms of boosting that participation, so we don't just have the same people that like sport doing more sport and the people that don't do anything still not doing anything. That's really our challenge, is sort of broadening the scope of people that are taking part in sport. There's 30 seconds to finish typing, then hopefully we should be able to see all the answers. So, okay, that's not particularly helpful. I don't know if you can see the answers, but certainly I can't see the answers. Okay. Potentially, if you'd like to, you can retype what you think the biggest barriers are in the little chat box at the bottom down here, because this seems to be a bit of a malfunction on my end, which I am extremely sorry for. To summarize what we were talking about, the 5 steps I think you need to take in order to start engaging with the sporting landscape is, firstly, map your landscape, get an idea of what it looks like, who the players are, who the people that are most important to you are, and then that's your starting point once you know what the landscape looks like. Secondly, make sure that you have, when you're thinking about recruiting new board members or staff, that you're building your team with the skills that you need in order to engage with that landscape, as well as to deliver the items in your strategy. Take advantage of the links and networks people already have, the skills and experience they've got, is going to really help you rather than just starting from scratch. Taking advantage of the networks that are available. There's lots of networks already set up in Wales. Lots of opportunities for you to speak to people in similar situations. So taking advantage of that is a huge step towards getting a better idea of what's going on in the rest of the landscape and sort of keeping your ear to the ground and listening for changes that might affect you. Once you've got those networks, do start to build relationships, particularly with people that are in similar situations to you or have been in similar situations that you think you might be able to help each other out, you might be able to collaborate on items. That's it's sort of growing that network and helping each other out is really important. And then most importantly of all, engaging with the participants. So actually listening to what people have to say, trying to get that insight about what the barriers to them participating, what would they like to see more of, what do they actually want you to be doing on their behalf, and really helps you to guide the work that you're doing to meet the needs that they have or that they would like to see. So I'm going to start going through. I see some stuff coming through the chat box, and I'll start trying to answer some of that. But if you've got any questions, we've got at least the next 10-15 minutes to try and ask and answer questions. So please do have a look. So Mike, thank you for the comment about the Fit for the Future conference and looking at forums for sharing best practice. We have been looking at that. We have got the details going to be up in a little bit, but we're going to be hosting a conference day in October where we're going to try and bring people together to talk about leadership and governance, and how we prepare organizations for the future. That's going to be one of the opportunities we've got for people to start sharing best practice and talking to each other and building those networks. So that's one opportunity there. We've been looking at some other options as well. I realise, yes, it has been 6 months, so we will need to push on with that a bit, but we'll do our best to update you on that soon. Ian, I think that's a really good point about the one of the barriers being comfort and awareness in the club and NGB worlds. We are, even when we talk about that sort of vast landscape, there is certainly an element for new people coming into sport that they're entering a new community where they don't necessarily feel they fit. So that's probably a good point about trying to educate, or how do you introduce people to what that looks like, how the system works. That's probably a really useful place to start for a lot of clubs. Access to facilities and coaches is certainly a barrier, and we're trying to do more to make sure we've got facilities that are fit for purpose and that everybody can access, and that we've got the coaches to fit that is a massive challenge. It's again talking about the landscape, but a whole system issue of we need the people to play, but then we need the coaches to support them, and we need the facilities in which they can do that, and the numbers we have of each are sort of reliant on each. So if we don't have enough people to justify the facilities and the coaches, then we can't grow. But equally, if we've got too many people and not enough facilities, then we won't grow either. So that's certainly a challenge. And Angela, your comment sort of mimics Ian's in a little bit. That How do we involve people in the environment, creating a welcoming, inclusive environment, is sort of the other side to the coin of how do we help those people understand what the environment looks like in the first place in clubs and NGBs. Got any more questions from anybody, or comments, or sort of reflections on your take on the sporting landscape? Okay. Whilst we're still typing questions, and there's still another, I'll leave this window open for another 10 minutes or so at least, so that we can keep asking questions. But just to talk a little bit about what's upcoming, I mentioned that we're going to be hosting a sort of conference day on the morning of the 20th of October in Cardiff. Details will be coming out for that very soon, but it's going to be open to all governance and leadership framework for Wales signatories, to the boards and staff of those organisations. It's focusing on governance and leadership, and how organisations can work to sort of look to the future and prepare themselves for that. But all details to follow in due course. We've also got more in the series of webinars. So the next one is in 2 weeks' time on accountability and transparency, Principle 6. Then in September, looking at board recruitment, and then looking at risk management in October. You can sign up for those on our website. There's a link at the bottom, or you can go to the website. There's a section on governance and leadership framework for Wales, and in that, a section on training and workshops, where you can see all the details of those 3 webinars and the webinars that follow after Christmas as well. If there are no more questions, feel free to go about the rest of your day. There are some more questions coming through now, so I'll leave this window open, but thank you very much to everybody for joining me this morning. Hopefully you find it useful. You will get a follow-up email with a link to a feedback form. So if you enjoyed it, please let us know, and likewise, if you think there's stuff that we can improve on, then definitely let us know that, and we'll build on that for the rest of the series. Okay. Larry, that's a good point on the I guess, not one of the barriers, but one of the ways of getting over the barriers. So how do we make it more fun? How do we make it engaging? How do we make it appeal to other people? And that, I think, links back to this idea of speaking to participants, and not just your current participants, but the potential participants, the people that you are trying to get in, finding out what it is they actually want from sport, rather than just trying to force on them the product that you've already got. Finding out what they want is probably key to getting people to join you, is providing something that they actually want to take part in. It's an interesting question, Ian, about how an NGB can judge how well they understand and engage with the landscape. Partly because it's quite difficult to know. It's quite difficult to know what you don't know. So if they're not engaging, they won't necessarily know what they're missing out on by not engaging. But certainly a good measure would be how much they're speaking to other organisations in similar situations to them. If they find that they're getting blindsided a lot by information, or that they keep missing opportunities for things like funding applications, or opportunities for partnerships, then certainly they may well not be engaging as well as they could be. But likewise, it's not a completely digital yes or no we're engaging. It's very much a spectrum of not engaging at all to engaging a lot with lots of steps in the middle. So I think almost every organisation could always be doing a bit more in terms of engagement if they think it's gonna fit into helping them deliver the work that they want to do. If they're delivering their strategy, they may be at a certain point in terms of their engagement, but going above and beyond that is never really going to hurt, I don't think. In terms of setting priorities on areas to focus progress its understanding and engagement, and that really depends, I think, linking it back to the strategy. So there's no point in focusing your engagement on local authorities if working with local authorities isn't part of your strategy. And so linking up what you want to do in your strategy and figuring out from that who it is that you need to speak to and who it is that you need to engage to is probably the best way to set your priorities. I think the strategy, the strategic plan is always your the basis of your roadmap for what you should be doing and where you should be going next. Any more questions whilst we're here? Okay, so I think everybody's got my email address. Certainly, we will send an email following up from this. In that, my email address will be there. So if anybody wants to ask any further questions by email, then they can do. But otherwise, sort of end the recording now. Let you guys get back to your day, possibly go get some lunch, given it's that time of day. But yeah, again, thank you very much for joining us.